Howdy, and welcome to the Texas Bucket List. My name is Shane McAuliffe, and our little show has got quite the reputation for finding some great places to eat across the Lone Star State. But we always have time for some Texas history. That's exactly what we did in Goliad, a great place we've been to several times. But this time, we got to check Mission Espiritu Santo off the list. Goliad is a sacred site for Texans. Presidio La Bahia was our first stop a few years back, but across the river from the famed fort is another stone structure that was built at the same time back in 1749.
In the 1700s, Spain came to Texas when it was wild land.
Brenda Justice is the superintendent of the Goliad State Park and Historic Site.
It's a lot of fun working here. It's hollowed ground. It's a very special, beautiful place.
The site includes Mission Espiritu Santo, the ruins of Mission Rosario, and the El Camino Real Visitor Center.
So you're telling me this requires at least 3 or 4 stops on the Texas Bucket List?
It does. There's a lot to see and do and learn.
It all starts on the banks of the San Antonio River with Mission Espiritu Santo, which back in the 1930s was a pile of rocks until a local judge decided it needed to be resurrected from the rubble.
It was used as for different functions until in the 1930s when Judge White, our local county judge of Goliad County, worked really hard to get the National Park Service to designate it a national park. When that happened, that's when the Civilian Conservation Corps, they were able to come in and restore it.
The craftsmen who came to restore the mission were predominantly World War I veterans and first built the Cottage to have a place to stay and to brush up on their Spanish architecture. Cody Edwards, the park's lead interpreter, took us on a tour.
So this is the keeper's cottage.
Okay, so the guys that rebuilt the place.
Correct.
Okay.
So they lived here, and this was actually, in essence, their proving ground. So they got to experiment on architectural style and practice their trade before they went and lay their hands on the historic Mission Espiritu Santo.
Kind of get their mindset for reconstructing something so old.
Exactly, that's right. This is where they experimented with their craft before moving on to the real deal.
It took 6 years to finish the mission, but once completed, the site had the same sacred feel as it did back in the 1700s.
So we are walking into the chapel of Mission Espiritu Santo.
Beautiful. Hard to imagine that this was here in 1739.
Some 270 plus years ago. The Spaniards and the Franciscans especially had a very particular style, and I think you can see it a lot in the arched roofs and even your arched supports and things of that nature. They tended to be very ornate.
How did you guys know it was this color? Because, I mean, it was just ruins in the 1920s, 1930s.
So the excavations that took place, actually, and if you want to look in this room, really told us a lot about the mission itself and what things may have looked like. So if you check this out,
this is amazing.
There is a lot that can be gleaned from an aesthetic standpoint from our mission, and things like this tell us a lot.
Gosh, this is actual paint from that 17.
It's pretty amazing that it came out just like this, and you can see, the plaster and the cast and how they pulled it out. It's truly amazing, but this did teach us quite a bit.
The mission was home to the Aranama Indians.
When Mission Espiritu Santo was built here in 1749, at its height, it had over 300 or so natives living in the site. It was kind of like its own little town. They did all kinds of spinning and weaving and whatever they needed, like a little city to survive. They taught them their way of life, the Spanish way of life, and they provided food for their families. They had shelter over their heads, and there were incentives to stay in the mission. And when it was good times and the animals were abundant, the hunting was good, they could leave and they just wouldn't come back.
Converting the natives to Catholicism and providing them a place to stay wasn't the only function of the facility. Mission Espiritu Santo also happened to be the first mega cattle ranch in Texas.
It's really interesting. You never think about missions and cattle herding.
That's true, and that's where they had vaqueros, the Indians and the natives that were learned to be vaqueros and cowboys and go out and take care of the cattle. And they were strong and rugged cattle that today you see longhorns, which were kind of the remnants of that Spanish cattle that they brought over from Spain.
40,000 heads of cattle grazed around the mission, in an area bigger than Delaware.
This is part of the complete package, and this was the beginnings, the trappings of some of our earliest history as a state.
The mission closed in 1830 and lasted 81 years. But connecting to this part of Texas history helps you understand just how long the Lone Star State has been explored by European settlers, who helped shape our identity as Texas.
To know that this was one of the first places that Europeans came through this area and tried to establish colonies and such, and mission sites. So that's my favorite part. I love it.
Goliad State Park, a historic site, to me is all about identity and protecting the legacy of what came before us. That's central to being Texan.
It's just a really neat part of Texas history, and there's so much to learn about how they attempted to conquer Texas, or the land that was once Spain.
To me personally and professionally, this is a bucket list park for me to work at.